Good design sells itself, but only when it gets to the right users. And to go to the right users, you need to go through your client first. And your client is often not the right users, so you need to convince the client that you have done the right design. Hi, my name is Rasika Mahensiri and welcome to the Tier 1 UX Designer channel. And this video is all about giving you certain tips and tricks which you can use to convince your client that you have done the right design. If you're seeking for approvals for your designs, then you need to explain your designs to the client first rather than just emailing the design and seeking for approval, because client often don't get what you have done because he doesn't have the thinking that you do have. In that case, how you can create a right pitch, how you can sell your design to the client. To find an answer to this question, let's look at how you need to construct a design. Now, we all know that design needs to solve problems. It is not only something that looks nice and feels nice, but something solves a problem. That is why Steve Jobs said this quote. It is mainly about how it works. So, how you can design something which works? You need to follow this strategy, which I'm going to explain you whenever you're designing. Now let's understand it from the client's perspective. Why that person tries to do this business? Why that person tries to make this product? Because that person might have certain business goals, some business needs to fulfill. First of all, you need to understand these business goals. Why this client is coming up with this product and why he's trying to do it. It's not that difficult if you listen to client story at the very beginning of each of these projects. Let me give you certain tips here. The client will often give you a mix of requirements. He will not explain you directly the business goals. It has business requirements, it has functional requirements, it has non-functional requirements. It's a combination. Client doesn't know this classification for sure, but you need to understand how these different requirements differ from each other and derive these different requirements from the client's page. What are the high-level business goals? What are the functionality requirements that the client is expecting? What are the non-functional requirements which the client is telling you? And client will never give you this requirement as a comprehensive requirement. He will tell you bits and pieces. It's your job to find the rest. The first thing, now we need to address these clients' initial business goals in our design. This could be very tricky as sometimes we cannot directly map a business requirement into a feature or any other thing. Sometimes it could be achieved using a combination of features. Sometimes it could be achieved using some non-functional requirements, or sometimes it could be the entire product, or it could be marketing. It could be anything. You don't have to be a BA, but you need to have a very good understanding about how to map these different business requirements into the product. Then comes the user, people who are going to actually use this product. Now you got to understand that every problem that's out there in the world have some kind of a solution. It may not be a software solution, but it could be some workaround, some I don't know, some kind of a solution do exist for every problem. Now every solution has pains and every solution has gains too. Now in the solution that you are going to design, you need to overcome this pain gain ratio in the existing solutions. How are you going to do that? And that is exactly why I do a little bit of a research about these user groups and people who are using it, what pain points these people do have, and what goals and what needs they do have while using existing solutions. You need to address these pain points. You need to help the user to achieve these goals and needs. And that is the second part of it. Every feature, every element, that every component that you have in the design should be related to the business goals that the client has and the problems the users are facing. While you're solving this problem, you need to ensure there are certain other things in the picture as well. one, regulation, the compliance. There are so much of rules and regulations that you need to adhere to when you are designing a software. For example, if you are designing a software product for the European Union countries, then you have to strictly adhere to GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. If you don't do that, then your client will be fined, heavy fines. Those are like, millions and billions of fines. And there are certain countries have certain accessibility guidelines and regulations, and certain domains have certain regulations. For example, finance sector has certain regulations you need to follow, and healthcare sector has certain regulations. Now, as a UX designer, should you know all these things beforehand? No, that is not how it's going to work. It will come with your experience, but when you are doing a particular project in a particular domain, you need to do a little bit of a research on what kind of compliances that we need to adhere to when you are doing this. And sometimes the client will explain things as well, and sometimes the client doesn't know. In such cases, you have to explain it to the client. So this will grow, your knowledge base will grow as you gain in the experience. But this is something that you need to pay attention to when you are doing a design. And there are certain other quality attributes that you need to pay attention, like usability and accessibility is something that falls under the designer's umbrella. Usability describes how easy user can use your design, and accessibility ensure that everyone can access your designs. But that is not a must for each and every project, but it's good if you can pay attention to accessibility as well. And to do that, you need to follow certain design principles, like to make sure your design is usable. And the famous design principle said that we use is 10 usability heuristics, which was presented by Jacob Nielsen. That is the go-to guideline in usability even to this days. And Donald Norman has its certain principles. You need to look for these design principles before you do a design, how they help to achieve this goal. And there are certain other design principles like CRAP principles, which was coined by Robin Patricia Williams. CRAP stands for contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. These things will ensure that your design will look nice, as well as it communicates better to its users. And there are certain psychology theories you will have to use. Fitts law, Hicks law. I'm not saying that you need to put everything into your design, but you need to understand these concepts so that it will make your designs better. Then comes something very important. It's the technical feasibility. Your design should be able to implemented with ease by developers. If you look at it in this perspective, most of the cost of a software project goes to the development. So every bit and piece that you put in the design needs to be implemented by someone. And you need, now don't get me wrong, you don't need to implement it, you don't need to know coding to do user experience design, but you need to understand how things work, whether this is possible or not, whether this is the easiest way to do this, whether this would cost an arm and leg to implement it. If you don't do that, if you don't pay attention to that, then your developers will tell that to the client and say that, look here, this design would take ages to implement. If we change these things, and it would cut down the development time by 50%, 60%, then the client will agree with the developers, because the cost will the most cost will go into development. You are lucky if you are coming from the software engineering background. If not, then this will come with experience as well. Maintain a close relationship with these developers, and they are not your enemies. And developers will often help you to save your day. And that is exactly why we involve developers in our initial design discussions and design workshops. They will bring those facts into this workshop and say whether this is possible or not, or what are the other possible ways to do things. And often you need their help, and I teach my students that if you can't maintain a good relationship with developers, then you will never be able to do good designing job in that project, because you need their help. And often if you convince them first, they will back you up when you're pitching your designs to the client. They will say yes, it's possible and it won't take much time. And if you don't get their approvals first, the developer's approval, then they will tell client that we can't implement this one, and then often your big design would be in the trash can. So you need to pay attention to this fact as well. When you are explaining your design to the client, you need to create a compelling story, a compelling pitch rather, which consists of all these elements here. You need to explain the client how my design solves the problems of users that they have, as well as how it helps you to achieve business goals. When you are telling this story, you can get the help from these usability principles or other design principles that you have incorporated here, and certain psychological theories. You don't need to explain every input box and what goes in the, you don't need to do that, but walk the client through the user journey. This is how my users will, not my users, the product's users will use the system. When you're creating this pitch, there are certain other things that you can add into the pitch, like certain referrals, like certain popular applications. Look here, Google has done something like this, Facebook has done something like this, Instagram has done something like this. You can take certain referrals in terms of design patterns that you are using in your design, and then that would help you to convince the client with your designs. Then you need to seek for the approval and ask the question whether you agree with this concept, or and if client has certain things to tell, then you can note it down. But whenever I try this method, it works like a charm. All the time client will tell certain things here and there, but in generally the client agrees with me. You need to have certain different skills to do that. One is pitching and selling skill. You don't have to do it for the users. You don't need to sell your product to your users. You never do that. But to sell your designs to the clients, you need to have this pitching and selling ability, which you need to learn. It's a different ball game than what's being taught in our schools and universities. So explore this subject a bit. And you need to know storytelling. You need to have the ability of telling stories to the client or anybody in that matter. Remember this: if you don't tell a compelling story to the client, then the client will tell you a compelling story and ask you to change your designs.